The Great Gatsby, Chapter 5. So in this chapter, Nick organises a meeting at his house between Gatsby and Daisy. Gatsby then gives them a guided tour of his house, displaying his possessions, especially his expensive imported clothes. Finally, Nick muses on the nature of Gatsby's desire for this woman and remarks on the intensity of their relationship. At the opening of this chapter, Nick notices that Gatsby's house is lit from tower to cellar, even when there are no party-goers to admire it. Think about why this might be. Perhaps he wishes his house to be a beacon of light to Daisy in the same way that her green docklight is a source of spiritual satisfaction to him. But he also seems like a man who is afraid of the dark or of the ghostliness that comes from an empty house. For Gatsby, the show of his home must go on to face off the darkness troubling him. His life is essentially empty. Notice how he talks about glancing into some of the rooms in his house as if checking to see that everything's perfect. His home is therefore a showpiece, just another element of the illusion of his perfect life. It rains throughout chapter 5 and also through chapter 8, and the connection between these two chapters becomes more evident towards the end of the novel. Rain is a striking metaphor for spiritual release, and this chapter is full of examples of this. At 4 p.m. when Daisy arrives, the rain has cooled to a damp mist. The connections of cool and damp to Daisy's character are reflected from the previous chapter, where we learned that her feelings for Gatsby faded as his letter became a damp pulp in her tears. At the height of Gatsby's discomfort, when Nick finds the tensions too unbearable to remain indoors, it's again pouring with rain. And when Nick returns, Daisy and Gatsby have happily reacquainted. Significantly, the sun shone again, there are twinkle bells of sunshine in the room, and Gatsby is again an ecstatic patron of recurring light. However, gradually Gatsby starts to run down like an overwound clock, a result of having spent so many years obsessing over Daisy at an inconceivable pitch of intensity. The introduction of the symbol of Gatsby's shirts is very important here. Daisy breaks down at the sight of Gatsby throwing almost obsessively his shirts onto his bed. Her moment of release when the soft, rich heap dumbfounds her occurs at a moment of simultaneous wonder and disappointment. Gatsby's rather bewildered sense of sadness and anticlimax combines with Daisy's sense of wonder and awe at the spectacle of social status laid out before her. So just as we saw her react to Tom's status symbol of the pearls in chapter 4, she reacts to Gatsby's shirts with tears. We get the feeling in this chapter that despite Gatsby's sense of wonder and awe at Daisy's presence, he nonetheless experiences an unusual sense of emptiness and disappointment. Nick makes particular reference to the light at the end of Daisy's dock, the colossal significance of which has now vanished forever. For Gatsby, that light had been a tantalising spiritual beacon to light his way to Daisy, but now that she's within his grasp, it's reverted back to the ordinary. Gatsby seems to revel in the intensity of reaching for an object more than grasping it, so the trajectory of Gatsby's dream is such that the object of that dream, Daisy, falls short. This is part of Gatsby's tragedy, pursuing a dream that he himself has made unattainable. I'm just going to finish by linking some of these ideas to that of Gatsby's obsession with time and with repeating the past. Gatsby himself is referred to as an overwound clock in this chapter. When he enters Nick's house, he behaves very much like a stiff and wooden actor, full of unrealistic gestures and poses. In a strained counterfeit of perfect ease, his head leaned back so far that it rested against the face of a defunct mantelpiece clock, and from this position his distraught eyes stared down. The deliberate use of negative adjectives to describe these clocks, defunct and overwound, reinforces the idea that Gatsby has a skewed and unrealistic idea of time itself. He constantly envisages a future in which he can live forever in the intensity of the moment when he first fell in love with Daisy.